Republican U.S. Senate primary debates.
Provided in part by the Wyoming Public Television Endowment and viewers like you.
Wyoming PBS, Wyoming Public Media, and the Sheridan Press present Election 2020, Part 1 of the Republican U.S. Senate primary debate, live from the Whitney Center for the Arts at Sheridan College.
Good evening and welcome to the 2020 Wyoming U.S. Senate Republican primary debate. We're broadcasting live from the beautiful Whitney Center for the Performing Arts on the campus of Sheridan College. This is the first of two debates this evening, and I'm Craig Blumenshine from Wyoming PBS. Joining me to ask questions of the candidates tonight are Bob Beck, the longtime public news director from Wyoming Public Media, and Kristen Czaban. She's the publisher of the Sheridan Press. A quick note about tonight's debate: we are practicing social distancing here this evening. Unfortunately, we do not have a live studio audience other than just a few family and campaign members, and we hope that can change sometime soon for future debates. Kristen?
9 of the 10 candidates on the Republican ticket for U.S. Senate are with us this evening, and with the assistance from the Wyoming League of Women Voters, who conducted a random draw for us, we've split the candidates into two one-hour debates. Our first debate will include Cynthia Lummis, Michael Kemler, Donna Rice, Bryan Miller, and Joshua Wheeler. The second debate, which will begin in about 1 hour, is expected to include John Holtz, Robert Armstrong, Robert Short, and Star Roselli.
All of the candidates have been briefed on the ground rules for tonight's debate, and the order that the candidates will take questions was randomly chosen by the League of Women Voters. I want to also tell our listeners and viewers that we will also host and broadcast a Democratic U.S. Senate primary, and that'll be Thursday night in Riverton.
The first question in lieu of opening statements is predictable, and the questions after that have been drawn from a pool of questions submitted to the viewers of Wyoming PBS, the listeners of Wyoming Public Radio, and the readers of the Sheridan Press, as well as constructed by Kristen and Bob and me. The candidates have not seen the questions we're going to ask them in advance other than the first one. And we want to get right to our debate tonight, so if the candidates are ready, let's begin. And Representative Lummis, you'll have the first question, and it is predictable. Please introduce yourself and describe why you feel you are most qualified to be Wyoming's next U.S. Senator.
Well, thank you. And I particularly want to thank Sheridan College, the Sheridan Press, Wyoming Public Radio, Wyoming Public Television for hosting this debate. My name is Cynthia Lummis, and I'm running for the United States Senate to be a staunch supporter of President Trump in enacting his America First agenda. In light of COVID-19, it is critically important that we return supply and manufacturing chains from China to the United States, that we have a robust, all-of-the-above energy policy, and that we get a handle on our debt and deficit. It will be more important than ever that we have proven conservative leadership in the United States Senate. I'm a fierce advocate for small business, an unwavering defender of the Constitution, and a committed, seasoned conservative Republican. I was proud to represent Wyoming in the U.S. House of Representatives and look forward to the opportunity to represent Wyoming in the United States Senate.
Thank you. Mr. Kemler.
Would you repeat the question?
I sure would be happy to. Introduce yourself, and please describe why you feel you are most qualified to be Wyoming's next U.S. Senator.
My name is Michael Kemler. I'm an over 40-year resident of Wyoming. I am qualified because I have worked in almost every industry in the state, and I know them inside out. And I understand what is wrong in Washington, D.C. with regulations. Our mineral industry is being overregulated, not for the purpose of environmental or safety concerns. It's being regulated for the purpose of putting it out of business. Whereas our agricultural industry is being crushed by unfair, non-competitive practices by gigantic industrialized agricultural corporations, and they need to be regulated. The Sherman Antitrust Act was designed specifically to prevent what is currently happening in our agricultural field. And the yellow light's blinking.
Thank you.
I'll stop.
Mr. Kemler, I appreciate that. Ms. Rice?
Hi, I'm Donna Rice. I'm running for U.S. Senate. I am a fourth-generation Wyomingite. I am an attorney, a mom, a grandmother. I am not a politician. I feel like we're in a time where we need to break away somewhat from our professional politicians. There are a few in D.C. that need to go home this term. And so I'd like to be a strong advocate for small business in Wyoming and around the country. I believe that is absolutely key to our COVID recovery. I am experienced in small business, love it, and full of probably more ideas than I will ever live to create in this lifetime. I've enjoyed traveling around and meeting the people of Wyoming, and it would be a pleasure to represent them. I am encouraged by just how good the Wyoming people are.
Thank you. Mr. Miller.
Thank you for the question. I'm Bryan Miller, and the answer to your question ultimately is leadership, to provide leadership. I trained as an officer in the United States Air Force at the Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs. General MacArthur once said, "On the fields of friendly strife are sown the seeds that in other days and other fields will bear the fruits of victory." What we're up here doing tonight is exactly that. We are on those fields right now. And the seeds that are sown by the voters come this election will bear their fruit in Washington, D.C. for years to come. For decades, I've seen the nation as a whole come under attack, or the fabric of our society. Just because there's violence in the streets of other cities and not in Wyoming doesn't mean that we're not under attack by socialist and liberal agenda. Bold, innovative leadership is ultimately what we need. I see the lights are going short, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Mr. Wheeler.
Thank you very much, and thank you everybody for putting this together. There was a lot involved, I'm sure. My name's Josh Wheeler. I'm running for U.S. Senate. You can check out my platform at fightingforwyoming.com. And one of my taglines that I've been using since December of 2018 is a combat veteran fighting for the people. What do I feel makes me qualified for this position? Whether it's leading a business or taking orders, as a soldier, as an enlisted man. It's important to be able to understand and think outside the box. And that's something that I feel that is extremely lacking in D.C. right now, is the ability to think outside the box and communicate. Once again, my name is Josh Wheeler. Check out my campaign page at fightingforwyoming.com. You can also look me up on Facebook at Josh Wheeler for U.S. Senate. Thank you.
And now we'll start the true questioning part of the debate. Each candidate will have 1 minute to respond to each question. And the candidate who has asked the question originally will also have an additional 30 seconds for a rebuttal. This question is from Bob Beck to Michael Kemler.
Mr. Kemler, welcome this evening. The nation's healthcare system continues to be stressed, of course, due to COVID-19. There are a number of solutions being proposed in order to give people more access to health insurance and health care. What's your solution?
We have, because of COVID-19, we've seen how an employer-based insurance plan will fail to meet the needs of the people at a time when the economy falls and people become unemployed. What we need to do is to investigate how things are done in other countries. I'm not a fan of socialized medicine. I think it's destined for failure. But there are other nations who have had much better results at a much lower cost than we have. We have the most expensive healthcare system in the world, and yet when compared to other countries, we rate poorly in many areas. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Rice?
I am an advocate of private insurance. I believe that competition in the marketplace will help keep prices down. We need to keep our costs a little more available to the consumers. I am also a strong advocate of medical cost sharing groups. For example, if you have a MediShare type program, you have 10,000 people contributing $175 a month. You now have a pool of $1.7 million coming in monthly that you begin to spread those costs out. And I think like-minded groups could come together form sharing co-ops and be very successful. I'm personally a part of one, and I've found it to work very well.
Thank you. Mr. Miller?
Great. Thanks again for that question. The federal answer is an expensive answer. It always has been. Anything you do with the federal government, whether you try to do a single-payer system or even just with Medicare and Medicaid, is very expensive. We can't afford that as a nation. What we can do, though, is exactly what has been said on a couple of different folks here. We can look at private insurance. Private insurance is what most people did not want to lose when Obamacare came into play. Competition across state lines is something we absolutely need to do. And that can only be done if the federal government gets out of the way and allows the states to pick that up. Local control, the different groups that you're talking about where it comes to mutual groups of support. There's a lot of religious groups that do that out there, and they have been very effective in small states like ours.
Thank you. Mr. Wheeler?
Well, first off, I want to say that health care for all is a bad idea. When I hear anybody saying health care for all, the thing I look at is our VA system. And if the VA system fails 1 to 3% of the population on a regular basis, then what makes them think that a federally based system could actually take care of the whole populace? I actually would agree with both my fellow candidates to my right. There's systems out there. Christian Health Ministries is one that I've heard of, and I have some friends who are actually on it. And one of the gentlemen, his wife had some pre-existing conditions, couldn't be picked up by anybody else, so he gets picked up by that, and they've paid everything except $100. So to me, that seems more of an answer than trying to drag it out of the federal government, who's already failing one area of taking care of people medically. Then I didn't even see yellow.
Go ahead and finish your thought there. That's okay.
Well, it's just there are answers, and it's not nationalized health care.
Thank you very much. Representative Lummis.
Well, thank you. I think there's two main components that would benefit Wyoming from the get-go. One is transparency and pricing, and I would co-sponsor Senator Bill Cassidy from Louisiana, a physician's bill, to demand transparency and pricing. So we have a competitive pricing structure that we can all explore. Further, I think it's important that we have the ability to purchase insurance across state lines. This is a way also to ensure competition, just like we have with automobile insurance. You know, Obamacare was created for large markets, big urban areas, and Obamacare has not served Wyoming well at all. In fact, we now have the highest insurance premiums in the nation. It's time that we roll up our sleeves and address the problems of Obamacare for a small rural market like Wyoming.
Thank you. Mr. Kemler, you have opportunity for rebuttal if you'd like to take it.
Well, there is truth in the fact that the federal government is incapable of running almost anything. But yes, competition is the answer, but we have not seen competition in the healthcare industry since the early 70s, when the Health Maintenance Organization Act was enacted in 1973.
Thank you. The next question for Ms. Rice from Kristen Czaban.
In Portland, federal agents have been deployed to address nightly protests. In other cities, the National Guard has been utilized. The ACLU has said such actions should concern all Americans. The White House and others have labeled protesters as violent anarchists. As protests continue across the country, do you believe members of the military and or federal law enforcement should be mobilized to quell civil unrest?
That is probably one of the most difficult questions we will all face tonight, because it is emotional. We are seeing our cities ravaged by violence. I believe absolutely in our right to gather and to speak our minds. Once we've crossed over into violence, then I think we have an expectation of some sort of response. Then we get the state versus the federal line, and where do you act when the state is, or the city is not acting? If I were in one of those cities and my home was in the area that was being surrounded and destroyed, I would certainly want somebody to be responding.
Thank you. Mr. Miller?
Well, this one's a little bit near and dear to my heart. I was there when we stood up U.S. Northern Command. And U.S. Northern Command took all the forces across the Northern Hemisphere on this side of the planet and put them under one location. One of the things that we looked at was the proper role of the military in supporting the civil world. And through that, there's a lot more than just, is the military doing this? The National Guard, Title 14, completely different than the active duty Title 10. There are different ways that they are brought in. The governors bring in Title 14 troops to help with the events, whether they be civil unrest or just to bring them in to help with disasters. That's a totally different story. In order to get the right answer for what you want, you got to tell me exactly what you're looking for, because there's a whole lot of different ways to do it. But bottom line, there's what is going on in the country is going to hurt us and hurt us bad. And the longer we allow this to happen, the longer or the bigger the issue we will have in the end.
Thank you. Mr. Wheeler?
I don't believe that law enforcement is picking up protesters. I believe they're picking up rioters. And if you're going to riot and act like a child and be a coward and bust up people's businesses, I think any means necessary to stop you. I'm very firm on this. There was a group in the Carolinas that was marching around saying, black power, black lives matter, kill all white people. And there's no negotiation. If there's no negotiation, diplomacy is off the table. If diplomacy is off the table, we take you out. If you're going to meet us with violence, we need to take you out with violence. Thank you.
Representative Lummis.
It is, of course, a constitutional right to peaceably assemble, and I support that. But we've gone beyond peaceable assembly. When there's looting, rioting, property destruction, when police's health is at risk, it's time for law enforcement to get involved. I think that federal agents, not the military, but federal agents, should go in to defend federal property, federal courthouses and federal buildings, not take the place of local law enforcement. When it comes to local law enforcement, grandmothers and mothers should be calling their mayors and their city council and demand that their city government send the police to defend their lives and their property. That's the proper role of municipal government, and the role of the federal government is to defend the federal property only.
Mr. Kemler, thank you.
They say that democracy, in a democracy, you get the government you deserve. In these places where there's social decay and they're allowing rioters to riot without immediate response, I suppose those people who voted for the municipal governments that they have must not have understood what they were doing at the time. Law enforcement needs to enforce the laws. As far as the federal government goes, they should not be on the streets enforcing municipal laws. They should be, as the Congresswoman said, protecting federal properties only.
Thank you. Opportunity for rebuttal, Ms. Rice?
No, I'm fine.
Okay. Next question is to Mr. Miller from me. Mr. Miller, would you vote to allow federal government bailout money to be used for states like Wyoming to replace lost state revenue?
No. No, period. It's that simple. It's a completely different story dealing with folks who are out of work, and that the government, which not only the federal government, but our state government, has literally gone into hiding because of COVID. They're not out there doing what they're supposed to do. You would not have the military step aside if something comes up. The military is there, they go off and do the thing. The government should not have gone into hiding had we not gone into hiding, and had we in Wyoming followed our pandemic plan that was updated on 30 June of last year, we would never have been in the condition we are right now. So we would never have to worry about replacing money that we've lost because we put people in quarantine who didn't need to be in quarantine, and we didn't shut down businesses that didn't need to be shut down, and we didn't take kids out of school that shouldn't have been shut down. If we'd have followed our plan, we'd have been in the same position we are, just not have to do what you just mentioned.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Mr. Wheeler.
I'm going to have to go with a resounding no. No state should be relying on the federal government for bailouts. And on that also note, I just want to step back with one thing. People saying that the military shouldn't be used in certain ways. When I was sworn in, I said that I will protect the Constitution and our country from enemies, foreign and domestic. It's in our mandate. Thank you.
Representative Lummis.
Well, I support the CARES Act that was focused on individuals and businesses because we need to get people back to work, preserve jobs, and reopen our economy. The money in the CARES Act and future money should not be used to refill the coffers of state governments. And one of the reasons that that is true is that many states have not been as fiscally responsible as Wyoming has in its spending. So I don't want my tax dollars going to Illinois, which is horribly in debt because of their irresponsible spending, and let them backfill their coffers with tax money that's intended to get our economy going and growing and robust once again.
Mr. Kemler. Thank you.
The federal government is printing money that really has no value. The concept that they're bailing somebody out with it is just bizarre to me. No, they shouldn't be doing it. A low-interest loan program for businesses, I would favor, but federal money just paying off states, no.
Ms. Rice?
In 100% agreement with everyone else. Absolutely not. We are all under this crunch. We will all have levels of accountability that we will have to deal with for financial decisions, both past and present and future. Our states and our local governments are no different. I think we are in a time where we will be transitioning the country a little bit. This has opened our eyes. We need to make some really tough decisions, and some of them aren't so tough, like bringing our supply chain home. Those are the types of things I'd rather see dollars going into rather than just bailing out a sinking ship.
Thank you. Anything to add, Mr. Miller?
Yeah, I agree right here with what was said, so that takes away a bunch of what I wrote down. But $6 trillion is what we've basically added in 2 months to our debt. That's going to our great-great-grandchildren and beyond. That is crazy. And the CARES Act did not do what it was supposed to do. Wyoming got $1.25 billion. Barely any of that has gone out to the people in Wyoming. Wyoming has not been as responsible either. We got $1.5 billion in debt. We had $800 million before we got into the COVID process. We've just increased that, less than half. So this is a bad idea to bail out folks who just can't do what they need to do. They won't do that for me and my family at home. I doubt they'll do it for anybody else up here on the stage.
Thank you. Next question from Bob Beck for Mr. Wheeler.
Mr. Wheeler, what reforms are needed in our immigration system?
In our immigration system? Well, I think we need to definitely put up more of a defensive perimeter, and that's the military side of me talking, and the blue-collar side of me talking with some of my blue-collar work. A proper barrier to prevent people from coming in would definitely help. And then I would rather see the immigration system actually favor those who come legally and not put them on the back burner while they're waiting for their stuff to expire. Actually move them to the front of the line, and those who came illegally, who are sitting in our prison systems or doing whatever they're doing, can wait the multiple months instead of the folks who are coming legally and doing something, at least obeying that little law instead of breaking laws once they get into our country.
Thank you. Representative Lummis?
We need comprehensive reform, not piecemeal reform. That has to start with securing our border, and I think building a wall is part of that. As components of comprehensive reform, we need to look at DACA, we need to look at the Dreamers, we need to do away with the lottery system, and in Instead, allow people that have merit to come into our country, and we have to defend those who are waiting in line and using the process properly, and not allow those who want to cut in line illegally to have an advantage over them. What we need in this country is to expand legal immigration and crack down on illegal immigration.
Thank you. Mr. Kemler.
According to the Department of Agriculture, we need 2 million legal aliens coming into the country to pick our strawberries and other fruits to keep our prices low and keep our bellies full. The State Department is only giving out 800,000 of those permits. Obviously, we have a serious problem in communication between our government agencies. So, immigration reform, yes, we need it, but we need some common sense to enter the equation. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Rice?
I agree. We need reform. We need secure borders. One of the things that I've been saying is that if we don't have borders, we have no nation. And let that sink in a little bit, because there's a lot that flows from that thought process. We absolutely have every sovereign right to have secure borders. With that being said, I am very much in favor of legal immigration. There are things we could do to maybe speed up the process, check the merit, and make sure that the right people are coming in. I have friends actually currently in the process of immigrating into this country. It's a long, tedious process. It's stressful for a family. So what reform we could bring that would make that somewhat easier would be good.
Thank you. Mr. Miller.
Yeah. Very simply, we need to enforce the laws that we have on the books. We don't enforce most of them as it is. They enforce them when they want to. We need to control our borders. That has to do with the fence. That has to do with electronic, all kinds of ways that we do that. We need to give more green cards for ag, no doubt. We need comprehensive, and by the way, comprehensive means too complicated to actually accomplish. So I'm tired of hearing people say we need to do comprehensive anything, because it just doesn't happen when you want to make it comprehensive. Reduce numbers. That's what we need to do for the illegal immigration, because people are not coming into the country and integrating to the point where we need them to integrate. 1.1 million people are illegally brought to the nation every year. That's twice the population of Wyoming. And what that's going to end up doing is, after this census, you'll see that Wyoming loses more than any state when it comes to it, because of the numbers of people that have come into this country, when it comes to the amount of money and everything else that comes to the states from the federal government.
Thank you. Mr. Wheeler, opportunity to respond.
Come on.
Okay. Candidates, we're going to pick the pace up a little bit with what we call a lightning round. We're going to offer one word or short-worded phrases to you, and you'll each have 20 seconds only to respond to each of these short words or phrases, and there'll be no rebuttals in this particular round. The first one will come from Kristen Czaban for Representative Lummis.
Okay, the first phrase that I have is statues and monuments.
We need to honor and respect and remember our history, because where we've made mistakes in the past, if we forget about it, we're bound to repeat it. And so it's important that we honor and keep and protect and preserve our monuments. By the same token, let's talk about the...
These are quick-paced
You're right,
responses.
I forgot. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kemler.
Many of the monuments are great works of art. The concept of just destroying them is rather offensive. Our history is our history. You can't just rewrite history by hauling a bunch of statues off.
Ms. Rice?
We need to preserve our American heritage, and I think that means we need to preserve our monuments. We also need to be educating our children as to what they represent.
Mr. Miller?
Well, I'll go with the beginning of what I said when I started down the road. The socialist liberal agenda is what this is all about. It has nothing to do with the history per se. All it has to do with is tearing down this great nation.
Mr. Wheeler?
The idea of it's a culture, and I was trying to think of it as it was coming to me. Deleting culture, cancel culture that's going on needs to just end.
Okay. Next topic is for Mr. Kemler from me. Dr. Fauci.
He's a scientist and a well-educated person. I have to trust that, in general, he knows what he's talking about.
Ms. Rice?
I might go with in general he knows what he is talking about, but I'm worried we're overreacting.
Thank you. Mr. Miller?
I'll buy that he's a scientist. I'll buy that he's been wrong a lot. And I'll buy that the country as a whole is in worse shape for listening to someone who after 2 weeks we already knew was wrong. We should have stopped listening then and gone on to other people who know better.
Mr. Wheeler?
To feed off of what Bryan just said, this COVID thing started, and at the beginning of the scamdemic, we had, oh, don't wear masks. It's a false security. It's a false security. Don't wear masks now. Wear a mask wherever you go. Put it over your face. Hide your face. Hide, hide, hide. This is getting old. It needs to end.
Thank you. Representative Lummis?
Individuals, businesses, states, locales know best what works in their communities. We have to rely on the trustworthiness, the responsibility, and the rights of the American people while addressing this COVID crisis.
Thank you. The next topic from Bob Beck for Ms. Rice.
Betsy DeVos. Betsy DeVos.
Educator.
Mr. Miller?
She's exactly right. She's an educator. She's been out trying to change our Department of Education. I've got a plan out there to actually really change the Department of Education. And you can see that on the NEA survey that went down, because I don't have time to talk about it right now.
Mr. Wheeler?
I'm going to fall in line here as well. With the fact she's an educator, I do think she should be handing out more or less guidelines and not trying to tell each area how to teach. I think that should be left up to the individual school districts.
Thank you. Representative Lummis?
I think there's an opportunity for vouchers, for reconsideration of elements of local control under the Betsy Voss Department of Education.
Thank you. Mr. Kemler?
I have a difference of opinion. I do not think that she's qualified for the job she's in.
Okay. Next topic from Kristen Czaban for Mr. Miller.
Stimulus package.
What's that?
Stimulus package.
Stimulus package. Wow, which one? I mean, I'm not a big fan of stimulus packages other than cutting taxes and let people get back to work and cutting regulations. If you want to stimulate the economy, cut regulations, cut taxes.
Mr. Wheeler?
It's one of those things that Bryan and I have had chances to talk on from time to time, and I actually have to say, cut regulations, cut taxes, and that's the best stimulation we can have for our individual folks.
Thank you. Representative Lummis?
I support the Senate's version of the latest COVID bill. The Senate wanted to spend about $1 trillion, the House $3 trillion, and I think focusing it in a way that encourages people to go back to work rather than stay on unemployment is extremely important.
Mr. Kemler?
The way to stimulate the economy is by creating jobs. We need to bring our manufacturing section back from overseas. When you create jobs, you stimulate the economy.
Ms. Rice?
The first two words that came to mind were becoming counterproductive. We need stimulus packages that get people back to work, period.
Mr. Wheeler, this topic's for you. Renewables.
Renewables, like renewable energy?
Wind and solar.
Say again?
Wind and solar.
Okay, viable is the biggest thing that comes to my mind. Until we have a viable solution to coal, gas, we shouldn't be getting rid of those two things. Viable meaning it's not going to fill up my landfill in Casper, Wyoming, 20 years worth of landfill for the blades of a windmill because they are not recyclable.
Thank you. Representative Lummis?
I support an all of the above energy strategy, but I think that when we give certain industries tax credits and the rest of them get deductions, we are picking winners and losers. I support a level playing field, and I support Wyoming's energy industry.
Thank you. Mr. Kemler?
Energy is a market commodity. Right now, the market wants renewables. If we're going to be a player, you got to feed the market.
Thank you, Ms. Rice.
I think renewables have some potential, but I think we are creating a mindset that they're great when they really also have a terrible footprint as far as, greenhouse gases, garbage, you name it.
Mr. Miller.
I could talk for days on this. Part of what I do is protect our radars from wind turbines. Solar is good down below Pueblo and south. It's good down there. Problem is, where does all that come from? China. China is producing a lot of the raw earth materials that are used to make our solar panels, and that's something that needs to come back to the U.S.
Okay, thank you. Candidates, will resume our regular question and answer part of the debate as we continue on tonight. This question is for Representative Lummis from Bob Beck.
Representative Lummis, do you believe there is systemic racism, economic disparity, and other social injustices that should be addressed by Congress? And if so, what policies would you support?
Well, I believe people should be judged by the content of their character, not by the color of their skin. So consequently, while there is racism in pockets in this country, and always will be, I believe that the American people are receptive and enjoy the great melting pot that we are, and that efforts should always be made by those of us who fight racism to pray for those who practice racism and work very hard in our own communities to combat racism where we see it. It happens individual to individual. It doesn't happen because government proclaims that there shall be no racism. This is a personal issue that we each need to take to heart and address in our own families, our own homes, and our own communities.
Thank you. Mr. Kemler?
I couldn't hear the question. Was it?
Sure. Do you believe there is systemic racism, economic disparity, and other social injustices that should be addressed by Congress? And if so, what policies do you support?
The policy I support is if we bring back our manufacturing section from overseas, people go to work. And when people have an income, they have stuff they care about, like a house and a car and a family. And if everybody's working, nobody's concerned about, am I being treated fairly? Because you are, if you're doing the job and being paid equally, then racism just isn't a factor.
Ms. Rice?
I believe there is racism. I don't know that I agree that it's systemic, but I have a son who has 2 black friends that we've traveled extensively with, and I've seen and experienced the looks and some of the things that they are frustrated with. I believe that the answer to racism is not from Congress. It is in our hearts. We need to begin to see people not as issues, but as part of God's creation. We need to enjoy the great diversity. I mean, it is a beautiful woven blanket of humanity, and we need to enjoy that and embrace it, not put each other down and look at each other differently because we have different colors of skin. I have freckles. Does that make me bad?
Thank you. Mr. Miller?
I like that. Systemic racism? No, I don't think so. Opportunistic racism in order to provide funds to fix an economic disparity? Oh yeah, absolutely. I believe that exists out there. Social injustice? How about, there are lots of social injustices that are out there. There are social programs that are out there, or justice programs, as in restorative justice. And if you've ever looked into restorative justice, take a look at it. It's one of the things the NEA is talking about doing. If you look at this country, the government getting involved in restorative justice, which is exactly what the NEA wants to do, and they want the Department of Education to support it, and they want all of us senators to support it as well. That is exactly what's been causing the problems in these major cities. Because if you look at their 2-page flyer, turn it over on the back, every city that's been burning, every city that's been being looted is on that list, and it's been in those cities for decades.
Thank you. Mr. Wheeler?
Systemic? No, I can't stand by that. In the military, we serve with every nationality there is. And I say nationality because there is only one race, and that's the human race. When it comes to how to help this problem that we do have in our country, where people see color and things like that as a downside, one, we need to keep our courts out of it, and we need to put it in our, as Donna said, you know, it's in our hearts, and it's also in our homes and schools, that we need to teach that everybody is equal in the eyes of God. And when we took God out of school and we took the Pledge of Allegiance out of school, that's when we started going south.
Opportunity to add, Representative Lummis?
No, thank you.
Okay. The next question is from Kristen Czaban for Mr. Kemler.
Should the U.S. Distance itself from international alliances like the WHO, the WTO, and others, and how do those alliances help or hurt Wyoming residents?
It depends on what you mean by the word distant. There is a purpose that's served by being in communication with all these organizations, and there's value to be had in the exchange of ideas. We pay way too much money to many of these organizations, and we get too little out of them. So although I don't want to just exclude them, they are part of what we need, but we're being overcharged for it.
Ms. Rice?
I agree with much of that. I think they do serve purposes, but I think there are times when accountability has dropped and we are justified in removing ourselves from organizations or demanding a step up in that accountability. Funding is an issue. We need to expect that the world helps carry its share of the burden for services, goods, whatever service and information they're providing.
Thank you. Mr. Miller?
Hey, can you restate that? Because there's something that's missing out of this.
Sure. I said, should the U.S. distance itself from international alliances like the WHO, WTO, and others, how should those, or how do those alliances help or hurt Wyoming residents?
Yeah, because that can go to a wide variety of different areas that you're looking at. Those particular organizations, I think, in a way, yes. We should force other nations, just like we did with NATO, just like President Trump did with NATO, get them to go out and pick up their part of this cost, because the America cannot do that for the rest of the world. We've got $30 trillion in debt, soon to be 31 or 32, whatever, maybe 33, whatever they decide back there in D.C. That we cannot afford to keep taking care of the rest of the world. Lead, yes, but pay for, no. There are plenty of people, plenty of organizations around the world who can do that. There's plenty of wealthy folks who are out there doing that right now and doing it in probably not the best of ways to do it. But we need to make sure that we're involved. We should provide leadership, but we shouldn't be paying for it all.
Thank you. Mr. Wheeler?
Distance ourselves to a point, for the simple fact of this: if you're in a business agreement with another business and you're doing all the work while the other business is reaping the rewards of your hard work, it makes absolutely no sense for you to continue to put forth your profits and your abilities towards something that's making somebody else money. So in this retrospect, we're talking about other countries not doing their part to help the United States and everybody to profit from a situation. And I don't mean profit in just money. I mean profit in ideas, profit in goods, profit in other things. If everybody's not pulling the same weight, as any Navy SEAL will tell you, you all work together or you fall together.
Thank you. Representative Lummis?
Now, you asked specifically about Wyoming and how it affected Wyoming, and I'll give you an example. Country of origin labeling. One of the reasons the United States backed off on country of origin labeling for beef is because of the World Trade Organization and arguments that it created unfair trade relationships. I think that now, in light of COVID-19, where our supply chains have been disrupted, where it's important that we know where products come from, that it's important that we revisit COOL. Country of origin labeling is important to Wyoming, and I think national organizations need to review their policies about country of origin labeling. That would affect Wyoming directly. With regard to the World Health Organization, WTO, and others specifically, let's start with good oversight in Congress of those organizations, ask tough questions, and then get the purse strings involved, because the United States does spend a lot of money on those organizations.
Thank you, Representative Lummis. Mr. Kemler, an opportunity to respond.
Well, there's one thing about the WTO and the country of origin. When I read up on that, it said that it was going to cost so many jobs and so much money to Canada and Mexico. We're the United States of America. We come first. I'm sorry if it's going to cost somebody a job someplace else, but we come first.
Thank you, candidates. You've been economical in your responses. We're going to add a question that we hadn't planned for, and I want to ask our timer to allow their responses to be 45 seconds each, if we could do that. So the final question to Ms. Rice from me is this. Today, what is the federal government's role in reducing massive unemployment?
I believe the federal government can help by helping our states and our communities provide local jobs and get small business restarted in this country. One of the things we're seeing and I mean by incentives, not just handing money, but incentives, tax breaks, things like that. As we drive across the state in this campaign, you see some main streets who are healthy and thriving, and you see others who are practically a ghost town. You hear citizens who are concerned about becoming a ghost town. We need help getting our small business back on Main Street America.
Mr. Miller?
Well, to answer that question first, it's very simple. It does go back to removing regulations, to cutting taxes, and to allowing the states to work with their small businesses and get them back up and running. Now, I want to go back to one that we just had, so I didn't get an opportunity to talk about COOL. COOL is one of those events that kind of shocks me. In 2015, that was actually voted on in Congress. And Cynthia, you know, you voted against that. You went ahead and allowed COOL to disappear. That hurt our ranchers. That hurt our ranchers really bad. And they've been telling me about that over and over and over. And that's why I challenged you on it earlier. I'm glad you've changed your mind. I'm glad you've done that, because that should never have happened.
Thank you. Mr. Wheeler?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
I'll be happy to. Today, what is the federal government's role in reducing massive unemployment?
The federal government's role? Well, actually, I'm going to go off of something that our current senator has said. The fact that we did tax cuts and the federal government actually started bringing in more money because more people were working, even though there were tax cuts for, some people will say, the rich, there were tax cuts enough to where more people got jobs and more people were working, where the federal government was actually making more money even after tax cuts. So I'm going to have to go with more tax cuts and less regulations.
Thank you. Representative Lummis?
Well, there's the federal role in reducing and rolling back regulations, and certainly the agency that was first and foremost in doing that under the Trump executive order was the Department of the Interior. They rolled back 7 regulations for every new one they enacted, so they were the leaders in that. Tax policy is critical to businesses being able to thrive. An insurance policy, unemployment insurance policy is important to it. Rural broadband policy is important to Wyoming. That is an area that's been identified as in need of a robust overhaul. With regard to COOL, I just want to comment that, yes, I voted against it because the National Cattlemen's Beef Association and the Wyoming Stock Growers advocated to do it because of the World Trade Organization. In light of what has happened lately, we have to revisit that issue.
Thank you. Mr. Kemler?
When the COVID pandemic broke out, the news said, expect product shortages because 48,000 U.S. companies rely on China for their products. That's 48,000 in China alone. That doesn't include India and Pakistan and elsewhere overseas. If we find a way to incentivize these companies to bring those jobs home, 48,000, if they each employed 1,000 people, that's 48 million people that need to go to work. Jobs eliminate unemployment. bring our manufacturing sector home.
Thank you. Ms. Rice, you have an opportunity to add.
No, thank you.
Candidates, this is the time for closing arguments. And we'll do this in reverse order that we ask the first question. So, Mr. Wheeler, you have a minute.
Okay. Once again, my name is Josh Wheeler. I'm running for U.S. Senate, fightingforwyoming.com. You can also reach out at 307-439-4288. Yes, I answer my own phone. It's a little bit weird. Don't feel bad about it. My main focus is, if elected, will be our VA system that needs a massive overhaul, our national debt, which needs to be our budget needs to be looked at 100%, not 50% or 60%. The only quote I have on how much they actually look at is over 50% gets automatically passed. I don't know one business in this world that's successful that can only look at 50% of their budget. We need to look at the whole thing and keep moving forward. Go ahead and check out my stuff on Facebook and on my website, once again, fightingforwyoming.com. My name is Josh Wheeler, and I appreciate your vote on August 18th, or even now. Polls are open.
Thank you, Mr. Wheeler. Mr. Miller.
Hello. I'm Bryan Miller, and I'm running for United States Senate for the great state of Wyoming. In the last 6 months, as I've been campaigning around the state, getting out there and talking to people, as much as a couple other candidates on here have, I've found two things that are really important that everybody needs to know. One, I have an amazing family. I have an amazing family that has done a wonderful job supporting me and doing what they can to help get me through this process and to get friends and neighbors and everyone else out there talking. We're doing a grassroots campaign. We don't have millions of dollars to spend like other folks do. We're out there talking to people, getting out there and doing the business of a candidate. The second thing is this: Wyoming is strong. Wyoming is strong. We've always been strong. I want to say this, since the lights are flashing, I am the only candidate for United States Senate who has the experience, the tenacity, and the guts to stand up for myself and to stand up for the people of Wyoming and Washington, D.C. God bless America, and God bless Wyoming.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Ms. Rice?
I'm Donna Rice. I'm running for U.S. Senate. I love, first and foremost, God, then my family, then this country and state. We are, in this election, fighting for our country, folks. We need to be courageous. We need to believe that we are bigger than the problems we are facing, because we are. Americans always have been bigger than the problems they're facing. I choose right now to run and invest my time, my treasure, and my talents in doing my part to join that fight. And so I'd ask you to check out my website, donnaforwyoming.com, and I'd humbly and very appreciatively ask for your vote in this upcoming election.
Thank you. Mr. Kemler.
I'm Michael Kemler. We're supposed to be a government of the people, for the people, and by the people. We've lost that. We're a government of the money, for the special interests, by the self-proclaimed royalty. We need to do three things. We need term limits for Congress. We need to get the dark money out of politics. And we need to make Congress live like citizens. Specifically, they've given themselves a paycheck for life retirement plan and Cadillac health care that none of us citizens get. We also just need a Congressional Reform Act so that all members of Congress have to live by the same laws that we do. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Lummis.
Well, thank you, moderators, and thank you, fellow candidates. I'm Cynthia Lummis, and as some of you know, I've been blessed to serve the people of Wyoming before, including 8 years in the U.S. House of Representatives. During that time, I worked day in and day out to champion Wyoming's energy resources, cut wasteful spending, and advance the conservative values that we hold dear. I signed and delivered on the No New Tax Pledge. I'm a founding member of the House Freedom Caucus. I earned an A+ rating from the NRA and a perfect 100% voting record with Right to Life. And I opposed President Obama's radical agenda more often than any other member of Congress, and I am very proud of that distinction. I'm running for the United States Senate to help facilitate the great American comeback and help President Trump do that, to champion energy production and to cut federal spending. On August 18th, or before, I hope I can count on your vote.
Candidates, thank you so much for participating in tonight's debate, and we want to echo those remarks and remind Wyoming voters to get to the polls on primary election day. My sincere thanks to Ryan Chippy from Sheridan College for being our timer this evening, and to Kristen, Czaban from Bombeck for serving with me on the panel tonight. Also, we want to thank our simulcasting partners, Wyoming Public Media, and especially Paul Montoya from Wyoming Public Media for handling the audio for tonight's debate, and for Kyle Nickloff for handling the video production of the debate. Thanks also to Sheridan College and their tech assistants for us here in the auditorium this evening. Just to remind you all, you can see this debate again online on our YouTube page at WyomingPBS.org. We encourage you to stay tuned for the next round of U.S. Senate primary debates in just a few moments. That will start at the top of the hour. Thank you, and we'll see you in a moment.
Funding for this program was provided in part by the Wyoming Public Television Endowment and viewers like you.
Wyoming PBS, Wyoming Public Media, and the Sheridan Press present Election 2020, Part 2 of the Republican U.S. Senate primary debate, live from the Whitney Center for the Arts at Sheridan College.
Good evening and welcome back to round 2 of the Wyoming 2020 Republican U.S. Senate primary debates. We're still live from the Whitney Center for the Performing Arts here on the beautiful campus of Sheridan College, and I'm Craig Blumenshine from WyomingPBS, and joining me again to ask questions of the candidates tonight are Bob Beck, the news director from Wyoming Public Media, and Kristen Czaban, the publisher of the Sheridan Press. Again, just a reminder, we are practicing social distancing here this evening. Kristen?
9 of the 10 candidates on the Republican ticket for U.S. Senate are with us tonight. And with the assistance of the Wyoming League of Women Voters, who conducted a random draw for us, we split the candidates into 2 one-hour debates. This, our second debate, will include John Holtz, Robert Armstrong, Robert Short, and Star Roselli.
All the candidates have been briefed on the ground rules for tonight's debate, and the order that the candidates will take questions was randomly chosen by the League of Women Voters. I want to also tell our listeners and our viewers that we will host and broadcast a Democratic U.S. Senate debate. That'll be on Thursday, and we will be in Riverton.
Thank you, Bob. Just a reminder that all of the questions have been pooled from comments we've received from the viewers of Wyoming PBS, the listeners of Wyoming Public Media, and the readers of the Sheridan Press, and also from the panel here this evening. The candidates have not seen the questions that we are about to ask them, but we are about ready to begin. So if the candidates are ready, here we go. First question is for Mr. Holtz. In your view, what's the most important issue where you feel you can make a difference for Wyoming in 2021?
Thank you. I have experience no one else in the world has. My first job out of law school was for the Hughes Aircraft Company. Half the geosynchronous satellites in the world were made by Hughes Aircraft. I was able to do things there no one had ever been able to do, including the first double-digit firm fixed-price contract in the history of the Hughes Aircraft Company. I was also then the head of the team to redesign the fire control system of the Army's main battle tank, the M60A3. Hughes made the laser rangefinder, ballistic computer, thermal imaging system. As a judge, I set up many of the courts that are now the circuit courts today when I was a judge in Douglas and Glen Rock. I have experience to act in a crisis, and I look forward to being your next senator with the help of the good Lord. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Holtz. Mr. Armstrong?
I believe the most important issue facing us in America today is how divided we the people are. We are not Black Lives Matter versus Blue Lives Matter. We are not conservatives versus liberals. We are Americans. But we have a government in Washington, D.C. that is addicted to spending, overregulation, and power. And we have politicians that lick their finger and put it in the air and figure out what you believe they want to hear. And then they go to Washington, D.C., and they become very, very rich, representing the corporations that put them there. I can't do that. My grandfather, Jack Corbett, made it clear that I cannot. I have a moral compass that won't let me do that. But I will represent you, the Wyoming great American people, and this great state. God bless America.
Thank you. Mr. Short.
Thank you very much, and thank you to Wyoming PBS, to Wyoming Public Media, and of course the Sheridan Press for putting on this event. I'm Robert Short, and I'm thrilled to be here standing before you to tell you why I believe I'm the best candidate for the United States Senate. As a boots-on-the-ground small business owner who's worked diligently with my wife, who cannot be here this evening because she is at home with our daughter who had to undergo emergency appendectomy surgery last night. We've worked very diligently to create jobs, diversify economies, and indeed look for opportunities to help our young people have a job here in this great state where they choose to live. The most important factors we can take into consideration as representatives of the great people of Wyoming is to look for opportunities to enrich our energy portfolios, ensure that we are independent of outside forces, whilst bolstering our nation's security, creating a better dialogue across the aisle, and ensuring our nation's food supply.
Thank you. Ms. Roselli?
Hi, and good evening. Praise the Lord. I believe I'm one of the only born-again Christians with a Pentecostal background that will be speaking to you tonight. My most important thing to me is for the citizenry of Wyoming to have a better lifestyle. Their standard of living has dropped over the years, and that's my number one concern. Some of the ways I would find a way to make this happen, I've been in contact with a helicopter company that would be willing to move to Wyoming if conditions were right. If I were senator, I would make legislation and I would have the proper permitting and the proper tax laws so that they would be able to come be with us, and that would bring thousands of jobs. I've also spoken to a small gun manufacturing company of small arms. Wyoming is proud, and it's a free state. And I think a gun manufacturing company would be perfect here, as well as the Prime Act. I am 100% for the Prime Act, and I can talk about that after.
Thank you very much. We'll get on to our questions. Each candidate will have 1 minute to respond to each question that we pose to you, and the candidate that is asked the question first will have an additional 30 seconds if they choose to take that time. From Bob Beck to Mr. Armstrong.
Mr. Armstrong, good evening, and thank you for joining us. The nation continues to spiral into debt. How are we going to recover from the additional debt COVID-19 has and will continue to put on the nation's bottom line?
Like I said, the federal government is addicted to spending. We must get away from baseline budgeting and go to a performance-based, zero-sum budget, because baseline budget inherently grows government. And this is going back to a system that keeps government in control. We also have to look at Article 1, Section 10 of the U.S. Constitution. And we can't let the federal government just print money and go get us deeper and deeper in debt. So we should go back to our founding roots, the U.S. Constitution, and get control of these bureaucracies.
Thank you, Mr. Armstrong. Mr. Short?
Thank you. As I've done in my private business with my wife, we have worked very diligently to grow economic opportunity. As we've seen the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic across our country and the excessive spending associated with it, we must ensure that we're investing in technologies and in infrastructure that encourages manufacturing back on our shores, which will in turn bolster job opportunities, raise the standard of living for so many throughout our country, whilst also protecting the interests of the United States and the people of our country and our great state.
Thank you. Mr. Roselli?
Can you repeat the question?
Sure. The nation continues to spiral into debt. How are we going to recover from the additional debt COVID-19 has and will continue to put on the nation's bottom line?
I don't believe we're going to recover, and the sooner we're honest about this, the better off we'll be. Every time the Senate needs to pass new legislation for monies that they need, they raise what's called the debt ceiling. That debt ceiling has been raised over 25 times within a very short amount of time in the last decade. It's going to continue to be raised until more of us, like-minded, who are very responsible physically, will stop that process. It's a runaway train, and it can't be held back by a few people, and a campaign slogan saying, "I'll bring down the national debt," is untruthful. And when I've been in touch with Senator Rand Paul's office in Kentucky, as well as Senator Ted Cruz, I've had discussions with people in their office about just these things. And bringing it back to the states, the Prime Act is what I'm really here to talk about for the farmers and the ranchers. We want to see slaughterhouses by the U.S., by the state of Wyoming, not the federal government, and we want that meat expanded outside the Wyoming borders to be sold to the entire nation.
Thank you very much. Mr. Holtz?
Yes. I was accepted at the University of Wyoming when my dad got orders to be Deputy Inspector General of Security for the United States Air Force in Europe. I started college at the University of Maryland in Munich. I saw firsthand what happened in the Weimar Republic with inflation, where a father could give his son a year's worth of tuition, and the next day it wouldn't pay for streetcar fare in Munich. If we don't solve this problem now, it is not your grandkids, your kids, it is going to be us. And sending career politicians back to Washington is just expecting more and more when all you're going to get is less and less. We have a real problem, and we need to address it. We need to address it by cutting social programs and have the courage, like I do, with the help of the good Lord, to risk my career to do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Armstrong, additional time if you'd like it.
Thank you. Article 1, Section 10 is to base our currency on commodities, gold or silver. We need to get back to that some way. We must cut spending so that our grandchildren and our children have the same opportunities as we had. This spending is out of control. I've run a company since 1993. I know how to cut spending. I know how to manage business. I'm a businessman.
Thank you very much. Next question from Kristen Czaban for Mr. Short.
Mr. Short, in times of crisis, who has the ultimate decision-making authority when it comes to instituting and enforcing things like public health orders? Is it the city, state, or federal officials?
Oh, that's a great question because you're talking about different governing bodies. Of course, our statute in this state is clear. The state public health officer has that power in our state and may be the same across other states. However, we must take into account specific considerations whenever enacting any orders that are meant to protect us, but sometimes may have the adverse effect of crushing our economies. This is something that we should address on a local level as well as a national level if we are to deal with pending issues and not cause ourselves more heartache and headache by overreacting.
Thank you. Ms. Roselli?
Can you repeat the question?
Sure. In times of crisis, who has the ultimate decision-making authority when it comes to instituting and enforcing things like public health orders? Cities, states, or federal officials?
Well, I believe with the masks, I believe it's wrong. It is illegal what's going on. This is America. For someone to force you to wear a mask almost makes me cry. I would make sure there would be legislation by the federal government to stop what is happening because people don't have a right to force anything on you or me. If you want to wear the mask, wear the mask. If you don't want to wear the mask, then don't wear the mask. It creates fear. It creates lack of communication between people, and that's not what we're about. We're trying to be better communicators. So I believe local governments do have control over their sovereign territory from the federal government. So Wyoming doesn't choose to pass a law mask that Colorado does. Wyoming should be in the right and be left alone.
Thank you. Mr. Holtz?
Local control is best, but when local control fails, then we need the state to act. When the state fails to act, then in exceptional circumstances, we need the federal government to act. We have a crisis. The crisis is not going away. The crisis is spreading across the United States. We have some states going one way, other states going another way, the federal government going about a third way. We need to do something now, which is basically enforce the law, be it local, state, or federal. Thank you.
You bet. Mr. Armstrong?
Yes, I challenge the premise of your question. First of all, unelected bureaucrats should never write law. The Chevron decision by the Supreme Court, I disagree with. And I wrote a resolution in the Resolutions Committee to change 35-4-101 to take the authority away from the health officer and put it back in the legislator's hands. Now, if there's an emergency, the governor can declare an emergency, give the legislators 14 days to act. It violates the separation clause of the U.S. Constitution to allow unelected bureaucrats to write law. And then we have nobody to go and unelect because they're bureaucrats. We could never get to them. So let's stop allowing unelected bureaucrats to write law.
Thank you, Mr. Short. Opportunity for additional time?
Thank you. None at this time.
Okay. Next question from Mr. Roselli from me. Extends on a question Bob asked earlier. With projected long-term deficit, are there reforms that you feel are appropriate for the Social Security system.
I didn't hear exactly.
With projected long-term debt, are there reforms that you feel are appropriate for the Social Security system?
I feel what's going on right now, for 2021, there is talk in the Congress that there will not be a cost of living adjustment for those on Social Security. That is extremely important to me and makes me very emotional, because every single elderly person here deserves a cost of living increase. And I would fight for that, and I would get that, because I'm a single woman. I have no children. I am unmarried. I am married to the state of Wyoming if you were to elect me. And that really makes a difference. As well as my first 100 days, I pledged to sleep in my office and shower in the Senate showers. No, it's not a gimmick. It's about doing the people's business. When I first come into Washington, I'm not looking at how thick the carpets are or how fancy the chandelier is on K Street. I'm about doing the people's business. And it starts today and it starts now. And we need to take care of the elderly first. We're all going to be elderly someday. Let's love them.
Thank you. Mr. Holtz?
Yes. One of the things we can do is eliminate the taxability of Social Security. That should not be the case. Then we can make benefits more clear. We could label them minimum benefits age, medium benefits age, maximum benefit age, so people understand when they take exactly how much money they're going to get. There are other problems we can use. Basically, cost of living is one, various types of approaches we can take, but the entire system needs to be overhauled and applied in a manner that is going to be constitutional and yet fair to everyone. So the deficit is ballooning out of control, and if we have hyperinflation like the Weimar Republic in Germany, we are going to be in very deep trouble. So we need to address the problem immediately. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Armstrong?
Yes. Social Security is a huge burden, but we can lessen the burden and extend the life of Social Security by removing billionaires and multimillionaires who don't really need the money. Social Security was designed to make sure that our poor or our elderly don't die poor. So let's make sure that we have a sensible means test that will reduce the cost of Social Security by giving it to people who need it and not millionaires and multi-billionaires.
Thank you. Mr. Short?
Social Security has been funded by people who paid over the course of their lifetimes with the expectation there would be a return at a certain period in their lives. Unfortunately, we've allowed for other activities to draw out monies from the Social Security pot. This is something we must put a halt to immediately and ensure that people are paying into the Social Security system at a rate commensurate with their level of pay, with their ability to pay, and ensure that we are doing nothing to harm those folks who are relying on that as their primary income.
Thank you. Mr. Roselli, you have time to follow up.
Thank you. I would like to say I would like an additional amount of money to be added to every elderly person's Social Security check. We pass out over $100 billion in foreign aid to people like China. Why are we giving money to China? Do we love them more than our elderly? This is where the money belongs. Keep it at home. Stop sending it overseas to countries that hate us and do not do our bidding.
Thank you. The next question from Bob Beck for Mr. Holtz.
Mr. Holtz, executive orders continue to become a tool to avoid Congress. Is it time to rein in the president's power to use executive orders in order to make policy?
At first blush, that may seem to be an attractive option, but you have to look at an emergency situation, which we seem to encounter with increasing frequency. No, to tie the hands of the president is not a good idea. We have countries, China, for example, that is not our friend, that is perhaps deliberately, if not inadvertently, caused the problems world to bring down world economies and, economies in various countries around the world. We have serious problems, and the president needs the power to deal with an emergency crisis. You can't move things through Congress at the speed of light, if you can move it at all. So, Mr. Trump, Donald Trump, needs that power.
Thank you. Mr. Armstrong?
Could you reread the question to me, please?
Sure. Executive orders continue to become a tool of a president to avoid Congress. Is it time to rein in a president's power to use executive orders in order to make policy?
I'm an extreme supporter of Donald Trump. He is doing a wonderful job. His executive order that reduced regulatory burdens on small businesses and medium businesses is what caused the economy to boom. He has reduced, before COVID, he reduced unemployment to 50-year lows in the minority communities. We were rolling really well because Donald Trump was running the government like a business. And that's what we need to continue to do. We need to go just the other way, and we need to make his executive orders the law. So the next president cannot just write them off. And he has a lot of them that are very beneficial to we, the people of America.
Thank you. Mr. Short?
Executive orders are a way of dealing with crisis situations. And used appropriately, these executive orders can help offset tremendously difficult times for the American people. So I would not be in favor of radically altering the presidential power to issue executive orders.
Thank you. Mr. Roselli?
Repeat the question.
Sure. Executive orders continue to become a tool for a president to avoid Congress. Is it time to rein in a president's power to use executive orders to make policy?
I don't believe now is the time to rein in orders for Donald Trump. I voted for Donald Trump. I don't know, no one here tonight has said they voted for him. They said they support him. I voted for him on the platform of being against abortion, which I am. The approximately $500 million, that's $500 million the taxpayers are spending to kill babies. That has to change, and it has to change immediately. It's sometimes hard to talk about these things without getting emotional because it's such a cruel thing to kill a baby when it doesn't have a chance to live. And $500 million is being spent every single year to kill babies. That has to be quashed. So no, I'm not for reining in Donald Trump as far as his laws are working for this country so far, and I'm happy where we're going as a nation under the commitment of Donald Trump.
Thank you. Mr. Holtz, additional time if you'd like it.
No, I'll pass. Thank you.
All right. Now we're going to quicken the pace again. We're going to start the lightning round now. Just recall that you'll have 20 seconds to respond to each topic, and there'll be no opportunities for rebuttal here. The first lightning round topic will be for Mr. Armstrong from Kristen.
Okay, the first topic I have is bipartisanship.
We have to reach across the aisle. We have to do things that are good for the American people. But we also have to do what is right. I have plans on my webpage to do the people's business, not corporate America's business.
Thank you. Mr. Short?
Bipartisanship can only be achieved through diplomatic conversations. Incendiary vitriol that's spewed across the aisles does nothing but divide us further. Civility is the course of action that we must take if we wish to actually have a conversation across the aisle. And I'm someone who can get that done.
Thank you. Ms. Roselli?
Bipartisanship is, I've run a nonprofit for 2.5 years before coming here called Star International Peace Foundation, and that deals with bipartisanship. Some people will never change, and there is not the ability to reach across the aisle. When the chances are available to us, I extend the olive branch. When their foot goes down, then it can't be done.
Thank you. Mr. Holtz?
Never be afraid to ask the Lord for help. We need prayer. That's what we need in Congress. That's what all Wyoming voters should pray, that we get the right candidate back there to solve our problems. I was a space systems surveillance officer watching for sea-launched ballistic missiles from submarines. I know how to act in a crisis. My performance improves, does not go down.
Thank you. This topic is for me, Mr. Short. Oil markets.
Oil markets. The United States of America has one of the greatest oil reserves on the planet. Unfortunately, we've ascribed to the philosophy that cheaper is better. I believe that if we had a choice at the pump to buy American-made at a higher price versus Saudi-made, we would choose American-made, and that's something we absolutely need to invest in.
Mr. Roselli?
Oil markets, to me, are important. We're number 8 in the nation for the natural gas that we put out. That natural gas needs to be sold on a wider scale to as many people as we can sell it to. And I also have a plan for drilling, which I'd like to be able to speak to in the future.
Thank you. Mr. Holtz?
Oil is very, very important. Wyoming is an energy treasure trove. We can have coal gasification plants. We have uranium. We have resources unmatched by virtually any other state, and we need to use them effectively for our friends. We need to put oil and coal through the Straits of Gibraltar to Europe and Israel, not to China.
Thank you. Mr. Armstrong?
As a geologist and petroleum engineer, I understand the value of oil. I also understand that the left has attacked our fossil fuels with climate variance for years and years, and no one has stood against them. It's a hoax. I think there is good science, and I think NPR and their media bias on this issue is detrimental to the people of the state of Wyoming.
All right, the next lightning round topic from Bob Beck to Ms. Roselli.
Tax cuts.
Tax cuts are very important to the growth of a nation, and that is something that needs to be kept at a low amount. Many states I visited, like California and New York, are out of control. They even tax on food, and I've heard that is a decision that's coming to Wyoming, and Wyoming never should ever tax food. There's many single mothers, there's many elderly people that could never afford the tax on food.
Thank you. Mr. Holtz?
Yes, tax cuts are important, but we have to look how they're applied and to what types of products. So a tax cut in glittering generality sounds like a good idea, but it could result in some severe problems. So we have to do a gyroscopic analysis of the total effect on the economy before we employ such a method.
Thank you. Mr. Armstrong?
Tax cuts are very important to stimulate growth, but we have to get our spending under control so we don't incur more debt. But the economy grows when you reduce regulations and reduce taxes on business. But let's keep our taxes on the millionaires and billionaires and let the people reap the rewards of their hard labor.
Thank you. Mr. Short?
Tax cuts must be accompanied by spending cuts that make sense. We're taxed approximately 57 cents on every dollar that we earn throughout the life cycle of the dollar. It's something that can be approached and dealt with in a reasonable manner, but offsetting spending must be accompanying those tax cuts.
Thank you. Kristen Czaban will bring the next topic to Mr. Holtz.
My next topic is whistleblowers.
I think that's gotten out of control. We see one thing, we see a government brought to a virtual standstill over hearsay evidence from some minor cog in a machine. I think it is overblown, so to speak, no pun intended. Perhaps the pun was intended. Whistleblowers have no place, and we should modify the law.
Thank you. Mr. Armstrong?
I think Garcetti versus Cavallari is bad law. It degrades the First Amendment, and the only protection that government employees have is the whistleblower law, and there is no protection in Wyoming for whistleblowers. We must have the ability to report unethical, illegal conduct of government.
Thank you. Mr. Short?
Whistleblowers are great on the football field, and they're fabulous on the basketball court. Where they do not belong is in the media. So whilst we have avenues available for people to report nefarious activities, I think sensationalizing it on the 6 o'clock news does no one any positive service.
Mr. Roselli?
Yes, whistleblowers is an interesting thing to talk about, and so are the 20 uranium mining projects that are under evaluation right now in Wyoming. It's a future power that can be used. We can either choose to be left behind, or we could push forward with this. I still want to do natural gas and oil and coal. 100% supporters. No one has to be nervous. We could be a powerhouse.
Thank you. We urge the candidates to stay on topic, if they could, please. For Mr. Armstrong, the CDC.
Could you give me the acronym, please?
The CDC, the Center for Disease Control.
It writes law, and I don't like that. Good science is good science. Let's do good science. Let's not scare people. The flu's the flu. COVID, I had it, I survived.
Mr. Short?
The CDC is an organization that was brought to life to help us combat unforeseen elements in the biological world. Unfortunately, like every part of life, it can be infiltrated by people who have nefarious behaviors or desires. The CDC has a role, but to elevate it to a point that it can control our nation is unacceptable.
Ms. Roselli?
The CDC I've never been a supporter of, and that will shock you. They have grown from a small organization to an octopus, and they take more and more of our federal funds and steal money that could be used elsewhere, such as the false claim that wearing a mask will prevent sickness. In March, Dr. Fauci himself said wearing masks is a placebo. It will not help. Now he has changed his mind. CDC said wear gloves before. Now don't wear gloves because you're spreading the same germs around. They're learning as they go.
Thank you very much. Mr. Holtz?
I'm not a fan of the CDC. They remind me of the World Health Organization, WHO, and the old Abbott Costello skit, Who's on First? One of the funniest skits I've heard in a long time, classless. But we have got a problem, and to say, yeah, let's not wear masks, and we said that because they're in short supply, not because it was a great idea. Thank you.
Thank you. The good news is baseball starts Thursday, right? All right. The final lightning round topic from Bob Beck for Mr. Short.
Clean coal.
Clean coal. For the last 50 years, Wyoming has provided the only source of clean coal across the planet. And now, for some reason, the rest of the nation wants to punish us, though we have worked very diligently to ensure prosperity and economic security. We need to ensure that we continue to invest in coal as a baseline generation modality and stop this nonsensical attack.
Thank you. Ms. Roselli?
Clean coal is exactly what the word says. It's not a misnomer. It is clean, and it was made to be evil by Obama, which is an evil man himself, and he has changed the thinking of the public to twist us into thinking it's wrong. Scrubbers work. They put scrubbers on factories. They're effective. What coal we don't use here can be sold overseas at a premium. It should be kept.
Thank you very much. Mr. Holtz?
Again, Wyoming is an energy treasure trove. We need to take the coal and take it by train to Houston, by ships, bypassing Somali pirates through the Straits of Gibraltar, to Europe, to Israel, and support our friends. So that is what I think we should do, and I appreciate the question. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Armstrong?
Clean coal. The state of Washington is violating our rights under the Constitution, and Montana and Wyoming versus Washington has been joined by 27 other states. And the Commerce Clause is real. It needs to be enforced. The Supreme Court should come out, tell Washington to sit down and let us ship our coal to Asia.
Okay, thank you. Candidates, we're going to resume our normal questions now. This is the time again when you have a minute to respond to each question with a 30-second follow-up. The next question for Ms. Roselli from Kristen. Czaban.
Earlier this year, the U.S. Supreme Court upheld certain tribal hunting rights in a case that originated right here in Wyoming. What place do treaties with tribes play in current land and resource management across the West?
I support the Indians. We love them. But the concern is when roads pass through our sovereign state highways, and they are sovereign, by the way, our state highways, then we can't be stopped by the Indians and told to turn around, or I'm going to have to test you here at the side of the road. That can't happen. So as much as I love them, when we intersect with them, we have to be able to conduct our business. We have to get our trucks through. We have to get our kids to school. We have to go to church service. We need to buy our groceries. All we're asking for is to share the same space. Whenever possible, though, my heart always goes out to the Indians because they have been sidelined for way too long.
Thank you. Mr. Holtz?
The Supreme Court has been a real disappointment as of lately. With the Oklahoma case, with the Wyoming case, it is very difficult to predict how they're going to rule in a particular case. Years ago, as a young judge, I was a delegate to the American Bar Association Judicial Administration Division. Outside were rioters protesting an anti-homosexual ruling of the U.S. Supreme Court. They broke in, made it up to the third floor. Recently, the U.S. Supreme Court took the opposite thing and went with transgendered and expanded homosexual rights with Justice Roberts, I believe Justice Gorsuch. I'm in a profession that seems to have lost its moral compass. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Armstrong?
Yes, we have treaty obligations with the Native Indigenous people. Those treaty obligations include hunting. They also include health care. I plan to defund Planned Parenthood and take that $530 million and push it to rural health. We need to take care of the indigenous people. We spend about a fourth on health care for them as an average American. Treaty obligations are treaty obligations. That includes hunting and health care. Let's make, they live on a socialist metric. So we have to take care to make sure that we, the American people, are obligated under treaty to take those treaty responsibilities seriously, including the back.
Thank you very much. Mr. Short?
Our treaty obligations need to be honored on both sides of the treaty. When we have overreach, that overreach ultimately leads to problems for all of us. If we revisit our treaties and understand what the intent of the language was, I believe that will provide us with the opportunity to better understand what each side is anticipating and obligated to honor. We must honor our treaty obligations just as much as the folks on the other side of the treaty must honor theirs.
Thank you. You have opportunity to respond.
Thank you. Most Indians, unfortunately, vote Democrat. It's a fact, and you can check it yourselves. So if they're going to keep voting Democrat, then I can't help you. If you won't let me help you by voting Republican, then there's nothing I can do, and I have to walk away. And it's an unfortunate thing, and I tell many Indians, please vote Republican, and you'll see a change, because for the last 30 years, you've been voting Democrat, and you see where you are today.
Thank you very much. I have the next question for Mr. Holtz. Should social media platforms be regulated, and can that be done effectively while differentiating between their various forms?
I think government is best that governs least. If we put censorship on these sites, I think we're going to end up with an unmitigated disaster. I am not happy with the leftward-leaning bent of many of these sites, having had family that live in Silicon Valley, let's say. Yes, we have a real problem, and it's, my cousin told me not too long ago, most of his neighbors work for Google when he lives in Mountain View, California. I've seen things change. I've seen California grow from a state that has implemented change, not for the better, but for the worse. So in answer, I do not think that is, while it sounds attractive at first blush, I do not believe that is a viable alternative.
Thank you very much. Mr. Armstrong?
It boils down to whether or not the media is a platform that just puts out the comments and posts of the user, or does it produce a viable media? Facebook, I don't believe, produces a media, and therefore the Prager University lawsuit should win in the Supreme Court against Facebook, because Facebook should just be the soapbox that we stand on and exercise our First Amendment rights. And they should not be able to biasly and maliciously censor the conservative voice. We've lost the ability to talk about God in public over the last 20 years, and we can't let social media become a biased interpretation of the fact.
Thank you. Mr. Short?
I believe that regulating any social media is a very slippery slope that gives way to censorship a la carte. I am a true believer in our First Amendment right to free speech, and therefore I would be loath to support any kind of regulation that censored one media platform over another.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Roselli?
Can you repeat the question?
I sure can. Should social media platforms be regulated, and can that be done effectively while differentiating between their various forms?
They definitely should be regulated, because I believe they become, this is an antitrust matter, they need to be broken up because they become a massive conglomerate, and they always seem to be against anything conservative or ultra-conservative. For instance, Jeff Zuckerberg of Facebook, it was started by, he's the grandson of David Rockefeller. Most people don't know that if you look that up. Google was given money to start out by the Central Intelligence Agency. These are facts most people don't know. They don't bring them to the public eye until someone like myself tells you about them and you're there. How can this be true? So they definitely need to be regulated, because they're given vast sweeping powers to say what they want and editorize and take things off the internet that are many times there's nothing. They're harmless. If someone's showing how to clean a gun, they find that offensive. Well, you're going to have to find it offensive, and we're going to have to defund you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Holtz, an opportunity for follow-up.
Yes, we must differentiate between a monopoly and government censorship. They are not the same, and we need to employ them in a different way if we wish to solve this problem. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, the next question from Bob Beck to Mr. Armstrong.
Mr. Armstrong, what has been your takeaway from the protests and marches seen across the country and here in Wyoming, and what changes need to be made to try and bring the country back together again?
Excellent question, Bob. Thank you. Like I said in my introduction, we are not Black Lives Matter versus Blue Lives That Matter. We're not conservatives versus liberals. We're Americans. And we need a government that is fair and the people feel like they are represented. And I think a lot of this stems from the idea that these people on both sides don't feel like they have representation. I've run an environmental company as a conservative for 30 years. I can reach across that aisle and shake people's hand and say, we can fix this. We can reach across and love thy neighbor. And we can bring us back together, one nation under God. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Short?
I'm sorry. Can you please repeat that question?
Sure.
Absolutely not. I think I've lost it. Okay, here you are. What has been your takeaway from the protests and marches seen across the country and here in Wyoming, and what changes need to be made to bring the country back together again?
My takeaway from the marches across the country is that some actors who are not necessarily interested in the original intent of the cause have sought to hijack it for their own personal gain or to promote an ideology that may not be in any way, shape, or form American. In order for us to come together as a country, we have to have civility in our conversation. We have to have the understanding that differing points of view do not make enemies. We all pledge allegiance to the same flag, and we have to realize that one size does not fit all across our great country. Working for Wyoming, that's my job, to work for Wyoming, to promote the values, the interests of Wyoming and help our nation grow. This is done through civility, this is done through diplomacy, and an understanding that sometimes the best answer is one where nobody's totally satisfied.
Thank you, Mr. Short. Mr. Roselli?
Can you repeat the question?
What has been your takeaway from the protests and the marches seen across the country, including here in Wyoming? And then what changes need to be made to bring the country back together?
There's a thing in the world called sin. A lot of us don't know about it, and it definitely changes who we are as a person and how we live our lives spiritually. I've talked to protesters that were bused from Minnesota. I was in Minnesota around the time of the riots when they burned down that police station and was told that they were being paid and that they were being loaded up on buses and taken down to South Dakota. And that's where they wound up going, to protest there. So this has become a means of money for them. And as far as changing these people, you can't change someone who doesn't want to change. If they enjoy anarchy, that's in their core curriculum. They were raised wrong. Something was not directly put in them when they were educated. But I do believe that stronger criminal penalties would apply to these people, because if you can't live in a society that's peaceful, then you need to be separated from a peaceful society in a prison cell.
Thank you so much. Mr. Holtz?
As a Christian, we need love coupled with law and order. Two wrongs do not make a right, but being a victim does not make you a hero. Thank you.
Mr. Armstrong, an opportunity to continue here.
I think I'm good. Thank you.
Candidates, we're right on schedule, so this will be the last long-form question for Mr. Short from Kristen, Czaban.
COVID-19 has reshaped America's workforce pretty much overnight. How do you see those changes and those shifts in our workforce affecting our economy in the long term?
Americans are incredibly resilient. And of course, change is an incredibly difficult thing for us. We become comfortable when we understand what the expectation is day in and day out. Of course, in this great state, innovators abound. We brought forth JCPenney, for crying out loud, in the beginning. The LLC was formed in this state. COVID-19 has put forth an opportunity for us to figure out new ways to be more efficient and more effective in what we do. Wyoming is truly a leadership state, and as your next U.S. Senator, I will stand up and lead this great country in a meaningful way, benefiting our state and our country.
Thank you very much. Mr. Roselli?
Can you repeat it?
Sure. COVID-19 reshaped America's workforce essentially overnight. How do you see those shifts in the workforce affecting America's economy in the long term?
Those shifts in the workforce, for the most part, have been contrived. 145,000 people have died in a nation of 330 million people. The ones that have died, most of them have had secondary conditions, hypertension, diabetes, heart attack, stroke. That's where we're faced with. It's being blown so far out of proportion that it's scaring people to no end. We don't have the amount of disease is not there. It's not provable, and that's why they keep talking about world numbers. I want to talk about United States numbers. And what Donald Trump did as far as locking down the borders to keep the Asians from coming in from the Chinese virus was the correct thing to do 100%. But I do think there will be some changes in the liberal workforce, such as Google or Facebook. I think in the conservative workforce, we're going right back to normal. No mask, no Lysol, no boots, no gloves.
Thank you. Mr. Holtz?
I think the virus, you have to look at the fatality rate, the infectious rate, because it puts a different perspective on the spin the media places on this disease. We need something to address the problems. We need the Republican Party to embrace Christian values and take the proper course of actions to aggressively fight this virus. Thank you.
Mr. Armstrong?
I had COVID, and it's not something you want. But there's also a speech given in front of the Open Up Wyoming where I express my feeling, as I feel today, the shutdown of our economy is an attack on the Trump economy. It was rolling, and they have attacked it from the Russia hoax to COVID to the riots. We need to get our economy back and working. So I then went to the Open Wyoming rallies. I made a speech that said this is an attack on the Trump economy. And then I went home and I wrote COVID management plans for my local businesses. And I gave them to them for free. And if you haven't been to the Mountain View, great food. If you haven't been to the Post, great food, Centennial, Wyoming. 2 days after I gave the Mountain View their COVID management plan, the health officer let them open up.
Thank you very much. Mr. Short?
As someone who's dealt with COVID since day one as a county commissioner and worked with the public health officer to ensure that there was an exception process put in place to allow businesses to continue operating rather than a blanket one-size-fits-all statement, we made a great impact in ensuring that businesses had the opportunity to at least have a trickle income when we know the difference between shutting down a faucet and bringing a faucet into a trickle will ultimately result in the faucet continuing to operate or being shut off forever. As a business owner, we struggled day in and day out when our restaurant, our hotel, bar were all affected immediately by the shutdown that was forced upon us by the state health officer. However, we put in place measures to mitigate and to allow for a safe operational scenario that continued to afford people the opportunity to make an income and contribute to our local economy. That's leadership.
Thank you very much. It's now time for closing arguments. And Ms. Roselli, you're first.
Can I have 10 seconds on this last issue?
Nope. But you can include whatever you'd like to say in your 1-minute closing argument.
Okay. It's about the Prime Act. Once again, we support our ranchers and farmers. We're going to get it passed if I go to Washington, and we're not just going to sell that beef in Wyoming. We're going to blow open the whole nation. We're going to sell it nationally. We're going to kick back that Japanese Kobe beef back where it belongs because it's such a lie how perfect that beef is. It's the Western beef. It's our beef. It's the Wyoming beef is what counts. The other thing is to our teachers. We love our teachers. We want a new course curriculum. We want to teach people about entrepreneurship, about the value of silver and gold, not fiat currency, about real estate. And we want to see, as the nation grows, the teachers' salaries grow as well. What we don't want to see is administration grow. I think that should be cut dramatically, and I'm sure the administrators will not like me for saying this. I'm a friend of the teachers. I'm not a friend of the administrators. And I just appreciate being here tonight so much, and if I make it, I will spend my first 100 days in office, in my office, not in a fancy room apartment, and I'll shower in the Senate showers, and that's for my first 100 days, and that's a promise I'll keep.
Thank you very much. Mr. Short.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I am Robert Short, small businessman, county commissioner, and non-career politician. My job is to work for the American people, but first and foremost to represent the interest of Wyoming and the people of Wyoming. As we've proven time and time again, as small business owners, growing economy inside our great state, I understand the importance of a ledger, an income versus expense attitude, and how important it is for us to reduce bureaucratic overreach that constantly tramples down the ability of small business, the economic engine of our country, to succeed. You can count on me to do the right thing for the great state of Wyoming and the people of Wyoming whilst working to help our nation. I'm Robert Short. Find out more at shortfor307.com. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Short. Mr. Armstrong?
Yes, I've run a company for 30 years. I've reached across the aisle to bureaucrats, EPA, DEQ, DTSC, RWQCB, and made sure that the interests of small businesses were taken care of. There are 3 people on these stages that have been elected to office. I am one of them. Cynthia Lummis is one of them. And Robert Short is one of them. I have never raised taxes. I reduced the size of government. I kept unhealthy, silly projects from happening. I am the only person who has written ordinances to hold government officials accountable. I am your best choice. R. Mark Armstrong, forsenate.com.
Thank you, Mr. Armstrong. Mr. Holtz.
I am John Holtz, With the grace of God, your next U.S. Senator. Please pray for America, pray for Wyoming, and pray that we get the right candidate. God bless all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. And to all the candidates, thank you very much for attending tonight's debates. We want to remind all voters to exercise their right to vote and either get to the polls or if you're voting absentee, get that ballot turned in. My sincere thanks to our panel, to Bob Beck and Kristen Czaban for serving with me this evening, and to our timekeeper, Ryan Shippey. Finally, we want to thank our simulcasting partners at Wyoming Public Media, and to Paul Montoya for his efforts behind the scenes, and to Kyle Nikoloff for handling all the video production for Wyoming PBS this evening. Thanks again to Sheridan College for hosting and for their assistance tonight. And as a reminder, you can see this debate again at Wyoming PBS's YouTube page. We encourage you to watch the debates this coming Thursday. They're from Riverton at 7 p.m. That will be the Democrat candidates for U.S. Senate. Thank you so much for joining us, and have a good evening.